So here we are back talking to Yasha and discovering all sorts of things about his life and about how he's developing in his path, dealing with Parkinson's and trying to make the best of things. So Yasha, how are you doing?
I must say, deteriorating nicely.
I can tell, yes, by your answer there.
Definitely deteriorating. I'm feeling, but I seem to be developing towards a pattern, which is very interesting. I must say, if I was to analyze my situation in life today, looking at myself at the age of 82, after a fantastic life, and I was very lucky all my life, I've reached a very, very happy stage at a very happy time. You know, I feel I'm developing spiritually because my material world, my life, is allowing me to develop spiritually. And I kept on asking myself for the last few years, why did I live it so late? Why did I live it so late to get a spiritual awareness that was deeper than it really was? And the answer was because I didn't have time for it. I was too involved with material things. In other words, spirituality needs time. That's one of the major conclusions I've come to.
Yes, one thing I must add though to that, there's different sections of when we're competent at things.
Yes.
Sometimes we're good at something and we're so good at we don't know we're good at it. And sometimes we think we're good at it and we're not. And there's other times where we're not good at it, but we don't know we're not good at it. You've probably heard these classifications before. I think a lot of your life, you were training in things just naturally that other people need a pointer at. So it'd be really interesting to hear why you think it is. But from the moment I met you, you had a very high tolerance level for other people's opinions, views, habits, or nature. I could sit you next to a stiff and starchy person that would like to talk about, who's been appointed for what and what jobs are done and what the changes and rules are. And you could do that. Or I could sit you next to someone who is in a celebratory mood and wants to talk about how the wine is and what, full of joy and so on.
Well, it's very complimentary and I appreciate that. And I think I know what you mean. I have been always very, very curious. And I've always enjoyed the experiences of other people. And that's why I liked old people. I remember as a youngster, as a young man, liking talking to old people. No matter what they had to say, it was interesting. I think that's true still today.
Yes, something brings to mind. Do you know the actress Joanna Lumley? Do you know
yes.
what I'm talking about? Someone once asked her the secret of her success, and I can't remember the exact phrasing, but she was more or less saying, if you love everybody, you get that back. And they can't help but reciprocate. And we can see with these videos, we send these videos out, and there's people from all across the world that say, hey, Yasha, I remember when you came and gave this talk in Australia, or when you came to see us in America or France or whatever, or just people who are just down the road. And yes, so I think, and that's an interesting thing. I mean, maybe we could talk about that a little bit.
I was referring to, I deviated from how I'm feeling.
Oh, sorry.
I'm still at the very beginning. Sorry, it's me that changed almost tunes. But the answer is that I'm becoming more aware spiritually, and I believe that since our last session, I got levels of comprehension in the spiritual aspects of what I'm doing or what's happening to me somehow more easily, only because I've had more time to contemplate on it.
Mm.
So that has been the benefit to me of Parkinson's in the last few months,
And
allowing me more time for spiritual awareness.
and can you put some of these things in words? So obviously, as you say, your body isn't doing as well as it has done in the past, and you're dealing with more symptoms. But at the same time, as you say, your awareness is rising. Can you describe to us what that's like? What kind of insights you're having? What kind of feelings there are?
I think you've sort of nailed it exactly. Everything that is to do with my body and with the earthly has become more specific, and it has freed the spiritual side of what feelings I'm getting. For example, I've been watching quite a lot of programs, YouTube type of programs on anything that is both scientific and spiritual. And so I'm obviously what I'm saying, what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking is influence. It's not my own original thoughts. I'm sure that it would be very difficult to have a completely original thought. But an awareness of the universe is one thing. I very much have persuaded myself that there is a lot of logic to the thought of Taoism, the concept that let things be. When you say, I'm not my body, what am I? I am, full stop. And that somehow that has got more practical significance in the sense that I actually practice it. I actually think to myself, I'm not feeling well at the moment, so my body is ill now at this moment. What am I feeling spiritually? And I push myself to think about it.
Mm.
And what I think is that whatever it is that I am is what I am. Thank you for letting me trying to express it, because it's very interesting that I'm finding difficulties.
No, it's lovely to hear. Obviously, in different mystical teachings, they do things to try to let you see the difference. So they do things. Whether you're holding a long posture, or fasting for days, or putting on a hair shirt, or whatever you're doing to try to make sure you are not your body.
Yes.
That actually happens quite naturally in some of these practices. You find yourself thinking, my body's telling me that it's hungry. And you think, oh, there's an extra step there going on. In a lot of these writings, they talk about almost the opposites. So the more in the body you are, the less you can rise up and see higher levels. Now, it sounds to me very much like fate or providence is guiding you in that direction. A lot of things you're doing every day, you're having to do body control, just to stop the shakes, to pour a cup of tea. You're having to do body control just to do something if you're feeling very, very tired. But this detachment between that, there's allowing a lot of freedom, a lot of freedom there.
Yes, and also I don't have as much control over my body. I mean, the symptoms of Parkinson's are this tremor, for the sake of argument, which obviously I've got no control over, except that I can take more pills and have more side effects. So it's better to not to do that. But physically, I've become more aware, for example, of the difference between those functions of my body that are under my control and those functions that are totally under not my control. In other words, my heartbeat, for the sake of argument, and the flow of blood in my body, and those that I can do nothing at all about. as opposed to function of motions.
Mm.
That difference between the two has become more specific, has become more emphatic, because I feel there is a spiritual element connected to those functions that I'm not under control, are not under my control. That there is a spiritual element to them, which obviously is not there for my normal actions. Although my normal actions, I'm trying to make them as close to natural functions as possible. You know, so I'm trying to get to a situation where everything I do is what is happening anyway. In other words, go with the flow. The idea of Taoism.
Yeah, Taoism. This, for some reason, this reminds me. I remember sitting next to a very wise person you and I both know, Lord Northampton, and he just said a phrase which is being, not doing. And I was, you know, I was too young to kind of get it then. But sometimes people say things, they're like a seed, aren't they? They're like a seed. And it sounds like, you know, the similar kind of thing, being. So instead of being separate from things, go that flow, seeing the flow, being with it. It's
That's very interesting. That's lovely. I like that very much. Being, not doing. In other words, you are part of the universe.
Yeah, so stop trying to work as a separate functioning bit. You're not separate. Yeah.
Stop looking at it as if it's not part of you.
Yes.
It is if that's as if it was somebody else's problem, nothing to do with you. Whereas being means that you don't have any options.
Absolutely. One of my friends sent me this is a complete aside. He sent me a little picture that said, "Don't be part of the problem," and then it was someone meditating, saying, "Be the whole problem." Yeah, so it's, you know, it's a way of turning it a bit of a joke. Yeah, but yes, no, he said, but as you say, you can. I think sometimes we can be a little bit of a blockage in things if we try to fight against how things are going, and as you say, set with the borderlines of separation. How superb to hear. No, it's hard for me to visualize the hardship you're going through. I could tell when I asked you, how are you doing? It was almost like a look on your face that was like, it's a tough grind every single day. I'm not sure I can bring myself to describe this to you, Martin. Would that be if I interpreted that correct, look, that every day there's a bit of a challenge?
It's a very good interpretation, because every day you become more aware of the facts. Firstly, that nothing to do with Parkinson's at all. Forgetting the Parkinson's element, I probably am getting it exactly the same way I would be in any case at the age of 82. I'm fortunate to be a healthy 82-year-old who is doing quite well, thank you very much. It happens to have Parkinson, but that's not only accidental, that's probably intentional. Somewhere along the line, it was meant to be. You know, there had to be something that came along. I look behind me and I don't seem to have had any problems at all, except for Parkinson. So Parkinson, I can even look at Parkinson's as a blessing, not as a curse.
Mm. Well,
because if something was to come, Parkinson would be the best of all the things that could come.
Yes, I think that's a very positive way of looking at things, and that is one other characteristic I've noticed in your life. So one thing I was going to mention for anyone watching this, Yasha's looking back at the past thinking there were no problems, when in actual fact, things that others would have interpreted as problems, there have been situations when you've had to go, oh, this isn't working, I need to change profession, or this person's got very upset with me, I need to do something else, or harmonize with that, and so on. The many things that would have thrown other people, and they'd still be very resentful. You know, it could have been something if it wasn't for that man against me. Did you know, when I was young and in Israel, I was rising up in this company, and then this happened, and there'd be all sorts. I'm making these things up, but
Absolutely.
there'd be things. I believe there are things in your past and people that have, not been very helpful, or there've been miscommunications that others would think back and think, I don't believe that happened. I'd have been the Lord of the universe by now if it wasn't for them. That would be a big responsibility.
The truth is that until we think about it, I was going to say until we get old, but I want to take into account that you're a young, wise man yourself. To what an extent you apply, to what extent we apply the practical aspects of our difficulties in life to try and give them a spiritual solution. And I don't know when that started happening with me, but it's resolved so many problems for me. And at some stage, I suddenly go, just 1 second, this is so unimportant, this muddle, this whatever we are talking about, hate, dislike, unhappiness, money matters, especially money especially. Money seems to be really a huge curse. It's somewhere along the line, I started looking at things I started realizing that I'm looking at things without looking at money first, and then at the item, at whatever subject I'm thinking about. I notice that other people have a tendency to look everything from a monetary point of view first, value first. How much will it cost? How expensive is it? How valuable is it? And then at what it is. Where should I put it? What should I do with it? Where should I go for it? Whereas that reverses.
That's a beautiful way of summarizing it, actually. Looking at the real value of things, not the value financially. And I think you remind me of Leo Zanelli there, who used to get very excited about something, and then, as a natural side effect, write a book about it or do something about it that would bring some kind of reward, and then move to the next thing.
I love that man, I must tell you.
He was, yeah, what a blessing he was. Very open-minded, very up for ideas and discussion.
Wonderful.
Yes. But the same with you. I mean, your inspirations are very interesting. And if you look at the books you wrote, there's actually a very broad spectrum there. So, for example,
I wrote them, that amazes me. I mean, the first book I ever wrote, which was nothing to do, not yet with Louis Masonic. The first book I wrote it on an Olivetti typewriter, where my parents had invited my wife and I on a cruise.
Yes.
And my wife got very angry that I took my Olivetti typewriter with me. But I wrote most of the book during the cruise and coming back home, and pages and pages that had to be typewritten again because of 1 or 2 or 3 errors. Compared to the last one we did together, you and I, which was this Royal Arch one.
Yeah, I was about to talk about that one, but carry on, yes.
Well, which of course I wrote in about, I think within the framework of about 3 months, which was really, I mean, quite an achievement, I must tell you, even if I say so myself.
Yes. So when a book, let's talk about writing a little bit. Okay. Yeah. So because you've done books on Masonic speech making, quite a few of those. I think there's 3 with Lewis, Masonically Speaking, Taken by Surprise, and a handbook for toasts, speeches, and responses.
Yes.
Then there's the book you wrote, which is about, it's kind of the history of London, but it's a guide. If you're visiting London, you want to go on a little tour, which has the Masonic things. You've got the City of London, a Masonic guide. Then, to me, the magnum opus, but it's because of my interests. We all have our own interest area, was that 200 years of the Royal Arch.
Yes.
And yeah, that must have been a great inspiration to write. It's a large academic work, but also inspirational. It's got a noveletta, isn't it? It's got a section there where you've dramatized some events in the history of the Royal Arch. How then? So many people watch this and think, oh, I've always wanted to write a book, or they might have an inspiration. How do you take that seed, I really want to do this, and actually make it happen? Now, I've already heard that you take opportunities, you go on holiday, take the typewriter with you. I mean, I love that. That's not like taking a laptop with you.
Yeah.
That's a different military operation. And you must have taken the paper as well, yes?
Of course,
Yeah.
not only the paper, but the references, books of references,
Yeah.
and like that.
Darling, we're going on holiday. I'm fully packed. And you've got this bag full of books. You've got a typewriter and everything, all the references and dictionary. Darling. Yeah, no, don't worry. You sunbathe.
You know, you make me have sympathy for my wife.
Yes. Well, listen, there are when inspiration strikes for me, it's a bit like that, but a lot of it's contemplative. So Kitty, for those who don't know, most people watching this will know Kitty's my lovely wife. I'm so full of inspiration, so thinking about that a lot of other things it's really hard to get engagement with. So we'll go to a party or something, and I'll just stand at the end of the garden thinking, musing about it, pacing, and so on. So I get so inspired and so full of it. And it's good because she's a muse, you know. So yes, there's the aspect where it's a bit frustrating when she said to me something and it hasn't gone in because I'm on this higher plane. But also she'll join in the mystery, whatever it is I'm working on. She'll often solve it, you know. She'll say something and I'll reject it. But that's the real answer for 3 weeks later. But yes, so how do you as you say, your long-suffering wife has seen the inspiration appear and you'll find the opportunity to it. But something like that big Royal Arch book, I mean, that's a staying power thing. There must have been points when you thought, oh, keep going, Yasha. I mean, the amount of research, the amount of dedication.
I think the answer is that the Royal Arch was already of interest for me for several years, many years. I mean, academic interest. I had given quite a few lectures and talks on the Royal Arch. I understood it myself.
No,
there was, sorry?
So I was about to say, in that book, I think it's in the book, please forgive me if I'm about to misremember, you found a quote. I don't know where it was. This is a memory challenge for us both here. There's a quote which is from the early records of the Royal Arch. It says, the Holy Royal Arch, unlike the craft degrees, is spiritual, or something like that. Am I remembering correct? It was perhaps in some minutes or something. Listen, I understand you didn't know there was going to be a quiz on that book today.
No,
so
I mean, the answer is that I don't know.
Okay, we'll have a look. Anyone watching this video, there's a race to find the quote Martin's remembering from Yasha's book and put it in the comments section below.
There is a spiritual side to Royal Arch which is lacking in the craft.
Yeah, there's something that implied that the Masons at the time, I think at the time of the Union, viewed the Royal Arch as being significantly more mystical and spiritual than the craft degrees.
I mean, that is a fact. I just don't remember the quote.
Yes, I think it's in there somewhere, which was groundbreaking. I hadn't seen that anywhere else. So yes, it was a good detective job, that book.
Yeah.
You must spend many hours in Freemasons Hall and other libraries going through these.
Yes, I mean, the point was basically to write the book. We had to do it fairly quickly, if you remember, because had to be for publication by the time the 200th anniversary was being celebrated. Then I discovered that there was something wrong with the date of the 200th anniversary, so that was quite a challenge. Then I managed to antagonize John Hamill and Royal Arch people who wanted to write their own book, for some reason didn't do so. But having decided not to do so because they couldn't do so in time, they didn't want anyone else to do it. And I felt that is totally unfair.
Well, you get this actually as a recurring theme in life. And what's happened, of course, is, I mean, I can't talk about these particular people or that particular case, but what I have seen is, you know, that inspiration we're talking about, they've had that, but there are external or internal barriers that prevent them expressing it.
Yeah.
They get upset when someone else does. And I've had it myself before, but as time has gone on, I've moved to a different position. If I get really inspired to discover something or write something or do something, and I don't do it, I often find that fate, divine providence, we're back to this again, says, okay, well, he will.
Yes.
And I think, brilliant, someone's done it. Yeah. The muses, they have missions, and if you don't accept them, someone else will. And I think that's probably what happened with this book, is that we needed a book celebrating this beautiful degree, and yes, you accepted the mission.
It was just that you and I were in the right place at the right time for the right purpose. I mean, you see, I think this book deserved being hardcover. I think it was very important for it to be hardcover.
Yes, it's a very
important now that I should have a hardcover publication, because if I'm to be considered as author to any extent serious, I had a very nice book on maps, on English maps, and another one on paper money, on coin banknotes, which were hardback.
Oh, so wonderful! And you also did a Masonic collectibles book as well at one point as well.
I was working on it, but I never finished it.
Oh, I thought I saw a version of it published at some point.
No, I did a lot of articles on different collectibles, but I never had the book published on collectibles. But it was necessary for me to have a hardback
I think so. But you talk about being taken seriously as a scholar and as a speech maker. In the background, I can see the copy of the square where you are meeting the Duke of Kent. That's correct?
Yeah, I've got that there for my grandchildren. My grandchildren are coming to this afternoon.
Oh, wonderful.
So I thought I should take it out. It's time to start showing them a few things, you know.
Yes, I mean, to me, just seeing that, it's just amazing to think of that sense of honor, that sense of awe, that sense of inspiration that the Duke must have had when he had an opportunity to meet you.
That's the one.
Now, do I seem to recall, is this to do with a livery, or how did this come about?
This was my involvement with the worshipful company of makers of playing cards.
Yes.
Which is one of the livery companies of the City of London. Very exclusive club. I'm a past master of that company. And the company was originally founded in 1625. Oh, wow. Equivalent of a modern union. That's what it was. It was just to protect all those trading in the playing card making in England, and trying to prevent the importation of playing cards from France and things like that. So the organization consisted of playing card makers, manufacturers, well-known ones. They're all famous names today that you wouldn't recognize, but are well-known within the trade. And the traditions over the last few hundred years have continued. Now, I'm persuaded that there is I'm not persuaded. There is a worshipful company of stonemasons of London.
Yes.
Which was founded in the 14th century, which was an operative one. So this was a working stonemasons as opposed to speculative stonemasons. So that transition from one to the other is of interest from that point of view.
Absolutely. Now, talking of transitions, I must warn you, we've only got a sort of 5 minutes left on our interview. The technology we're
I'm
using
afraid we need
limits
a
our
couple of
time.
hours.
Yeah.
We need a couple of hours, don't we?
I think so. So I think what we need to do is, we've talked a bit about books this session. The next one, I think we should talk about speech making, because you toured the world speaking for different people, and people saw you and were inspired, but also you enabled others, and you saw others, give speeches. This art of rhetoric, isn't so big nowadays. So it'd be nice to talk more about the written word, but also in our next session talk about the verbal one too, and some of your experiences and adventures and insights through this.
You're massaging my ego, Martin.
Well, it's nice to be able to explore things from the past, and
Lovely.
also,
It's very kind.
yes.
I'm very appreciative.
Well, I spend a lot of time reading and studying things which are of inspiration. And Giordano Bruno, he thought that celebrating the right things was the most important thing in our society. The right people, the right images, the right ideas.
Oh.
The celebration was a
Celebration meaning appreciation.
yes, it's like a form of contemplation.
Yes.
Contemplation and celebration are very close in his mind.
That's nice.
Okay, Yasha, so we will catch up again in the very near future. I don't want us to end abruptly, and I can see the counter counting down. As always, it's been an honor to talk to you.
Thank you, Martin, very much, and everybody.